Hello there, you are listening to The Screen Queen, where you'll be finding your favorite movie or your favorite television show and learning something new. You'll just have to listen to find out. Here is your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello there, and welcome back to the show. As always, and last time I checked, my name is Samantha Parrish, and you are listening to your host on the East Coast, The Screen Queen. So when we think of Mr. Rogers, saint has often been used to define him. And ironically, Mr. Rogers is not like that. But there have been many ways to define him as a hero. That he was just helping people. That's all he was doing. He didn't feel it didn't have to be called saint-like things because it's free to be kind to someone. And Lloyd Vogel needed someone to be kind to him, and that's when Mr. Rogers came in. The film A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is one of the best soundboard films I've seen in quite some time. Mr. Rogers has been a soundboard to many children and their children and their children's children since 1968, teaching children that it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be mad, it's okay to talk about things. He made this be a safe space to follow you into the generations. Even if something bad happens, he still is this echo that's going to be coming forward to people to let them know that it's okay, even if it's not right now. And that lesson really helps out right now because I am angry. And I had to accept that I'm angry right now from an event that happened to me this week. And during this time that I've been angry, a lot of the lines of this movie has been resonating in my head as the largest reality check to make sure that I don't let anger take away any more from me than it already has been. And this film really came as a blessing in disguise during a time in my life that I probably needed to hear calm the fuck down in the most nicest way possible from Mr. Rogers. So this was a very unexpected way to introduce this episode, but I have to admit, it made me feel better. It made me feel a lot better. Anyway, it sucks that I'm already getting a little bit before I get in this episode. Fucking, we're not even into the sad stuff yet, so, this is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. So for those that have never seen that film, well, when you do, please bring some tissue boxes. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is the story of a friendship between Fred Rogers and a reporter named Lloyd Vogel. Lloyd has been chosen to do an article about Mr. Rogers, but that also means there's hard-hitting questions to ask someone who has been comforting and educating children for 30, 40 years at this point. And during the time that Lloyd has been talking to Mr. Rogers is not really too interested in talking about himself. He wants to know about Lloyd. And Lloyd's going through some stuff. Lloyd's going through some personal issues regarding his father and the emotions he never talked about, the emotions that are suppressed. And Lloyd doesn't have much hope or faith that there can ever be a peace to his life. And that's where Mr. Rogers comes in at the right time. The way this film is set up is absolutely beautiful. It feels just like an episode of Mr. Rogers. Going into this, every time that you would be given a front row seat to one of the recordings that is almost stripped from the show, it felt like a blast from the past. I didn't feel 29 years old watching this movie. I felt like I was 5 watching this and getting to see Daniel Tiger again and getting to see the king again and the magical trolley that went through. It just made time stop for a second. And that's another magical thing about this film is the way that it makes you stop. And that's when the biggest thing is that it's a film that tells you it's okay to be angry, but that you also need to slow down. And that can be hard for many of us people to do. Even yours truly, who does the jack of all trades. There are many people that wonder, how do I have time to sleep or breathe? And I just say, well, I have to make that time to breathe. And if I don't make that time to breathe, then I'm not breathing. And that's one of the hugest lessons that you can relearn over and over and over again. But I want to take a little stop to talk about the film and talk about the man who's responsible for bringing Fred Rogers to life again. And that's Tom Hanks. Honestly, at this point, Tom Hanks has done so many biotopics, you could just throw a dart and then find someone that he's portrayed, from Captain Phillips, Walt Disney, Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom. Like, it is kind of impressive that someone can still be able to portray everyone and not feel typecasted as only portraying real people. But it's the way that Tom Hanks portrays these real people to still make them as real as the way people remembered them. You know, there are many films that people have said where they don't recognize Tom Hanks. This is that film for me. Even though that is Tom Hanks's voice, and that's definitely Tom Hanks, I see Mr. Rogers. And that's a good thing. And I think it's because he made sure that his voice was slowed down enough that you can see Mr. Rogers and not see Tom Hanks. It's a huge aspect that I didn't realize until I read the trivia. Tom Hanks revealed that he had a difficult time slowing down his speech patterns so it could fit the performance more to bring Mr. Rogers to life. Even having to watch myself talk slower, I'm like, yeah, that definitely does sound difficult. If you're not used to it, it makes sense. The way we identify one another and our emotions is how fast or slow we talk. And for Tom Hanks to put that level into portraying Mr. Rogers, that's an element I probably wouldn't have thought about. And then Tom Hanks even admitted that this was a terrifying role for him. I mean, when you're portraying someone that has comforted America for 40 years, that's a cardigan that you have to be very careful putting on. Mr. Rogers' widow approved of him being Mr. Rogers. If she didn't approve of him, then we probably would not have the movie. Let's face it. I'm sure there's a lot of other people that could fit the bill, but Tom Hanks just brought what needed to be appropriate for this role. He didn't overdose the role. He didn't underperform. It was just right, because we all know Mr. Rogers as someone who is kind. The way that he listens to other people, and I think that's what made it easy for Tom Hanks to play this role, is just listening to the other person and wanting to know what they're all about, you know, like how most people are. I mean, it sounds like he's pretty easy to perform. Mr. Rogers really feels like someone that people need to look up to, and I like that's how Tom Hanks played it, just the way that people remembered him by. But that was something that Mr. Rogers was known for, is shifting the attention onto someone else because he wanted to know more about them. Almost everyone that gave him an interview, they did not leave with answers about Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers got to know more about that reporter. To himself, he's like, oh, I'm just Mr. Rogers. I make a TV show. What do you do? What's your family like? Do you have a family? What's your favorite thing to do? Like, he doesn't have to do all of the publicity. You know, it's what made him such a wholesome celebrity, is the way that he would just interact with anybody. So when it came to Lloyd Vogel, Lloyd really had his work cut out for him. And with that story about Mr. Rogers and the way that he was with other reporters, and the way that it bleeds into this specific story about how a journalist had his life changed forever because of Mr. Rogers, you know, it really fits the bill. But there is something to think about with this movie that feels like a giant echo within itself. At the 47-minute mark, when Mr. Rogers' wife is saying to Lloyd, oh, he's got a temper. But the way she says it as he's got a temper, not he has a temper. That not even Mr. Rogers can go without being angry. And the fact that someone who teaches us it's okay to be angry is also angry himself, you know, that's not a big surprise. Mr. Rogers' widow says, It's how he chooses to be angry. Mr. Rogers does also confess what he does when he's angry, that he'll go for a swim. There's a scene where he does go for a swim to clear his mind. And at the end of the movie, when everything is said and done and he's on the set and he's working on his music and it's not working out, and you see him just beating on the keys, and then he stops and then he resumes. All of the things was like sprinkled into this movie to finally get that. So it shouldn't be surprising to see that at the end, because we're given these little Easter eggs, these little mental health Easter eggs. And that's exactly what Mr. Rogers has been teaching us all these years, even after his death. And to see that moment happen in the film, it feels really right. So with this being a biotopic, it does beg the question, how much of this is actually accurate? Now, it would take some balls to have to lie in a Mr. Rogers film, but there was a slight change being made to the movie, and that's with the guy that's all about, Lloyd Vogel. In real life, Lloyd Vogel's name is Tom Janode, and thankfully the bio for this film does not expunge the real name. In fact, if you look it up on Hulu, it says the friendship between Mr. Rogers and journalist Tom Janode. So, like, they let you know, like, his name's actually Tom, it's not Lloyd, but they still wanted to put the truth across. The character of Lloyd feels like a lesson, but that it also feels like a good soundboard. That he's learning how to control his anger, and we kind of get to have that first seat along with him, because it's difficult to let go of anger. I also come from a family where I've had my feelings hurt and I just have to live with it, and that can be difficult to take the high ground, but then also be pushed to the point that you can't take it anymore. Like, we've all been there at some point in our life, but then it's hard to not let that take over our life. It's hard to be in a position to let go of anger. It's way easier said than done, especially where everyone has their own severity of what happened to them that has to be violated. In the story, Lloyd feels disrespected that his father did terrible things in the family and that it's just not accounted for. But unfortunately, Lloyd is in a position where he's told, hey, your dad's dying, so you're going to have to forgive him. And it's like, how am I supposed to just let go of terrible things my dad did for most of my life? Like, that is a tough situation to be in. And with Mr. Rogers being there, it's kind of like a perfect soundboard to have to ride out the storm, because this was not going to be easy. You're watching someone go through the motions of emotions to the point that he has no choice but to face it. But he faces it in the most kindest way possible. Even Mr. Rogers knew that something was going to happen, regardless of even knowing the whole severity of Lloyd's situation. When Lloyd comes back to the studio, and that's where we're given this, like, panic dream sequence where he's in an episode of Mr. Rogers, like, that's a whole new level of a fucking breakdown. And he passes out in the studio, and Mr. Rogers just goes, Lloyd? Like, I saw this coming, but oh God, buddy. But it's what Mr. Rogers does in the way that Lloyd has to reset his emotions and be willing to take concrete emotional advice is where Lloyd finally begins to learn. And I'm just going to let you know, this right here is my favorite scene in the whole film. When Mr. Rogers and Lloyd are going out to lunch, and Mr. Rogers asks him to take a moment and think about all the people that loved him into being. And that can be very tough. Like, why do I want to think about people that love me when I've been screwed? You know, it's hard to see the forest past the trees, but Mr. Rogers urges on it. But it's not just Mr. Rogers. Everyone hears take a moment, and everyone takes a moment. It truly is the definition of how silence is golden. Everyone in the restaurant, they take the moment with Mr. Rogers and Lloyd. Everyone takes the time. It's like I said earlier, where this is a film about stopping. This is a good moment to stop. Having to think about the people that you love and knowing that there are people that want to be in your life. There are people that brought you into this life. There are people that want to have their life with you. When the numbers add up, makes the anger die just a little bit inside. That no matter how powerful anger is, it's not as powerful as love. And when the moment's over, Lloyd finally smiles and Mr. Rogers said, "I feel better. Thank you for taking that with me." A man that always likes the fact that someone else is willing to take their time with him to do something best for not just one of them, but for both of them. That's the effect that Mr. Rogers had on people, is that you did feel the words made an impact in a way that you had your own way of it making it work. Because all you're doing is thinking about the people that you love. But Mr. Rogers also did that at the Emmys. When he accepted his Emmy, he didn't have a speech. All he said is, "I'd like to take a moment and think about the people that brought us here." And in that moment, when the camera pans out to the different celebrities in the audience, you see Mark Hamill has his eyes closed. Several other hosts have their eyes closed. Everyone knew the Rogers Code. This is the time to take a chill pill and think about the ones that have you in your life and have brought you to this moment in your life. And to see that kind of recreated in this movie, pretty cool. So instead of ending this episode with my usual last spiels and stuff, if it's possible, as of this moment, I want to do what Mr. Rogers did. And I want everyone to take a moment and think about the people that they love. So if you're able to, I want everyone to close their eyes and just take a moment. It'll just last but just a minute, and I'll be keeping an eye on my timer. I don't know if you're driving or if you're just chilling out, but I wanted to offer this to help out anybody that's dealing with anger. Okay. Thank you for taking that moment with me. Oh my God. Oh, y'all can't see it, but man, I have a deluxe Waterworks package going on. Oh! Alright, it's nice thinking about people that you love. Well, as Mr. Rogers said, thank you for taking that moment with me. Sometimes it's hard to, take the moment to do stuff like that. And, when we're in anger, it's hard to, think past it all. And then we have someone like Mr. Rogers that validates that it's okay to be angry, but that you can't let that anger control your life, because then what are you going to do after that? You miss out on all the beautiful things in life. You miss out on all the love that you can have. You miss out on so many things. Anger robs you of your time as much as it robs you of your health. And look what happened to Lloyd. Lloyd's story is just one of many people that go through some very emotional things in life, but he had to look around and realize, I have a lot of people that love me. And from that spawned a beautiful friendship with someone that was willing to understand his problem and help him move forward. It is an honor that we do call Mr. Rogers a hero because he literally is a war hero, but I think hero suits him more than saint because that's what he is to Lloyd and to all of us. Well, that was a good little episode. Oh, I definitely got my anger out and I got my tears out. Oh, I feel exhausted, but in a good way. So this is going to be the last regular episode of the Screen Queen of 2024. We get to go out on a very kind note. And now I'm getting my sleigh bells together because it's time to jump into the Christmas series. And then, holy fuck, we're going to be in 2025. Where has the time gone? Oh, well, the only thing to do is to move forward. And that is going to be finding out what the first episode is going to be on the Christmas series. So I just got all of my suggestions together and I really had to find some good ones. So I'll be taking some suggestions if anyone has any holiday specials to throw my way. But with the ones I got, let's find out what it's going to be. Okay, what are you? Okay. You're a thing. Oh my god! Okay, so for the first episode on the Christmas series is going to be a very charming gem from Cartoon Network called Olive the Other Reindeer. I mean, I haven't seen that in a hot minute. That's going to be fun. Alrighty. Well, if you'd like to catch up with me in between uploads, you can find me on my Instagram at the Queen of the Screen. And I also like to advertise my Pride and Joy, the book series I wrote called Inglorious Ink. You can find it on Amazon, but I have that bad boy available in the description box. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time to listen to this episode. And remember, I like you just the way you are. This is your Screen Queen, signing off. Bye-bye!